Yo, what's up, man? Sean G, live and direct. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to all my new subscribers. Please follow me on the Podcast with Soul on Instagram. The podcast, the hell is that? The Podcast with Soul on Spotify. The Podcast with Soul on TikTok. One of the things that came out during the testimony at the Puffy trial, I was at the Puffy trial every day in court. I was in the overflow on the 24th floor. I was there every day, except maybe 5, listening to the real testimony. One of the things that came out is that Puffy has a private jet. And at the beginning, when he got indicted and arrested, Mark Agnifilo wrote a letter. It was a motion, but it was in the form of a letter. He asked the court to allow this letter to serve as his motion or response to the indictment. And in there, he talked about that Puffy was trying to sell his plane and that he had a couple of buyers. And Puff was trying to sell his plane when he first got indicted. But I don't think he was successful selling the plane, because the day that the verdict came back, Mark Agnifilo stood up in the courtroom and asked Judge Submaranian to let Puffy go home. He had been acquitted of the 2 most serious charges that he was indicted for, which would have landed him life in prison without the possibility of parole. And that he was found guilty on the lesser of all the 3 charges. And in his request to Judge Submaranian to let Puffy go home that day, which he was going to do until Maureen Comey stood up and said something, and then they took a recess. He went in the back, and then he came back at 5 o'clock and he said he ain't going home. But what Mark Agnifilo said was that Puffy's plane was in Hawaii, was in Maui, Hawaii on that day. And that he had Puffy's passports, he had all of his kids' passports, and that, Puffy was not a flight risk. But Puffy's plane was in Maui, Hawaii, and since he's been in prison, he's been renting out his plane for charter flights and has generated over $4 million in revenue from the chartering of his jet while he has been in prison. $4 million. I don't know what his legal fees cost, but let's just say $1 million and some change too. I don't know what the number is. There's been some numbers floated around on social media and the internet. But whatever the number is, whatever Puffy paid in legal fees, it was worth it because his legal team saved his life. But this is another indication of a player playing at the highest level. Now here's a nigga, he's on trial in federal court in the Southern District of New York, which has a 96% conviction rate in New York City, going to trial against 6 prosecutors, the most prosecutors on any case ever in the Southern District of New York in its history. Puffy had more prosecutors than anybody else ever. And there was some other supervisors and other support staff. Puffy hired 10 or 11 lawyers and said, tie your sneakers up, let's go to trial. And while he's been sitting in MDC Brooklyn and on trial for his life, and people getting up on the stand, perjuring themselves, lying on him, he beats the RICO. beats the SEX trafficking, the two most serious charges, which would have triggered the asset forfeiture clause, meaning they would have went after all of his money, all of his businesses, all of his catalog, going back to 2008, because that's how far the Southern District of New York extended his RICO case back, to 2008 to 2024, 16 years. It would have triggered the asset forfeiture clause. He would have been broke. His family would have been broke, and he would have been in prison for life without the possibility of parole. But this nigga is sitting up in court fighting the feds at trial, beats them, wins, beats the RICO. And while he's in trial in court every day, sitting in Embassy, Brooklyn, his private jet is being chartered by who knows who, generating him $4 million in revenue. Now you subtract out the maintenance, the fees, or whatever it costs, the upkeep of the plane. I don't know what that would be, but I'm sure he made some money on it. And he probably used that money from his jet to pay for his legal fees and maybe has some left over. Playing. Let the players play, man. The king of New York, the king of hip hop, hands down. Who else doing that? Integrity ain't never went out of style. Sean G, Podcast with Soul. Peace.